Hi and welcome to Inside Line. I'm Toby Hagan and I'm joined by Stephen Otley. Now this week we're looking at the Australian car industry and the Bathurst 12-hour race. First up though is our internet burnout, and this week it's one very lucky drag racer. The huge horsepower produced when these funny cars are charging towards 500 kilometres an hour led to an equally huge explosion. Now driver Ron Capps walked out of the fiery mess, albeit with significant damage to his car.
It was remarkably hopped out. He was literally sitting in the middle of an explosion, wasn't he?
He was. He looked a bit stunned by the end of it.
Better him than me.
Now on to other big explosions, and also this week Toyota announced it would join Ford and Holden in ending local production for Toyota of its Camry by the end of 2017. Now the announcement finally stamps a date on the end of the Australian car industry, but Steve, it wasn't a huge surprise.
No, like you say, I mean, it's finally. We've been moving towards this for, I guess, 9 months since Ford announced early last year that they were basically the first domino to fall. But when you just look at the market, you know, they've been building less cars here, selling less cars here, the economies of scale, the numbers just don't work anymore.
No, they don't. I mean, late last year, Toyota said it was looking at it, was hoping to put together a business case to continue with a 2018 and beyond Camry. There was that minor glimmer of hope, but the thing that did it for me was that Productivity Commission review that came out a couple of weeks ago that basically just said there is no point supporting this industry. Pull all the money now.
Yeah. Well, like I say, you look at it and then, you know, the numbers just aren't there. You know, the dollar's so high, so you can't export. There's not enough demand here for, you know, the cars that they're building. So, I mean, how do you make it work? I don't envy those guys at Ford, Holden or Toyota who've had to make these decisions because it's tough, but you know, what other option do they have?
Well, that's it. The fragmentation of the market has been enormous over the last decade in particular. I mean, a top-selling car now is selling half what those Falcons and Commodores were selling 10 years ago. So it's pretty hard to make it work on those numbers. But, you know, the model they were working towards was build the car elsewhere, sell the car everywhere in the world, therefore you can build it in 1, 2 or 3 places. Toyota already had that model. The problem was other people can build them cheaper.
We're just, you know, we're an island at the bottom of the world, you know. It just doesn't make sense for us to build cars. But it's a shame, though, because, you know, it's been a great industry. It's an industry that, you know, the backbone of the country for a long time. But so in that sense, it's sad that it's going. But, you know, like you say, you just look at it and think, you know, this, I guess, was inevitable at some point. It just was gonna fall away. But still, you know, still sad. Yeah,
it is still sad, and it's, you know, cars helped, or car culture has helped shape Australia to some extent, shape Australian culture. But I tend to think Australian car buyers aren't really going to care, because beyond 2017, theoretically they should remove the 5% import tariff that currently applies to about, I think it's about 60% of cars in Australia. So that'll make cars a fraction cheaper. There could be increased competition with cheaper second-hand cars. So we're working towards effectively cheaper cars and the equal variety to what we've got now.
At the end of the day, if it means cheaper cars, you know, I think people will be happy.
Cheaper the better. Now, also this week was the running of the Bathurst 12-hour, which turned into a classic tussle between some of the world's fastest supercars. Steve, did you watch the race?
Yeah, I did manage to catch a bit of it. I mean, the end there with Craig Lowndes in a Ferrari and this young German bloke in his Mercedes. It was a classic bit of motor racing. After 12 hours, you know, pounding around the mountain, and, you know, seriously impressive cars. They had the McLaren, the Nissan GTR, like...
They had Nissan GTR for half the race.
It looked quick until...
Then they had 2 halves of a GTR.
It was quick on 4 wheels, not so quick on 3 wheels. But I mean, it was an amazing race. But you had a slightly different perspective, Tabes, in the Fiat 500.
I did. I saw all those cars you mentioned whizzing past us a million miles an hour. Yeah, I was in the race. So it was. We had a bunch of journos, such as myself, in there racing away in these little Fiat 500 Abarths. They were surprisingly quick. I mean, I went back and looked at the times that car was capable of. 2:31 was the best that we saw on the day. And look, that would have put it on pole position back in the early 90s for those other Bathurst 12-hour races up against a Nissan GTR, a Honda NSX, you know, Porsche 968s, Mazda RX-7, so some seriously fancy machinery. So they weren't that slow. They were. No. We were only hitting about 225 down the straight, but which is a massive difference to the 290 odd that those Ferraris and Mercs and so on are doing. But it was still a really interesting race.
Yeah, I think 18th overall was the best position. So, you know, the tortoise did a good job with the hares. So.
Yeah, well, it was. It was, you know, it just kept circulating. We didn't really have any problems with the cars throughout the day. You know, at one stage I was talking about getting through the race on a set of tyres without changing. We ended up changing the tyres once, but, you know, it's pretty amazing for a little car like that it went as well as it did. Weighs just under a tonne, so it was pretty light. pretty light on fuel, so it was good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was just a great event. You know, the Fiat sort of, you know, gave it a little bit of character. You know, it created certainly a lot of buzz. But, you know, having those cars, you know, breaking at the fastest ever laps around Mount Panorama, you know, 4 or 5 seconds quicker than a V8 supercar, even quicker than a Formula 3 purpose-built racing car. So, you know, a great event. It seems to be getting a bit of, you know, groundswell of support now, and, you know, getting bigger and bigger each year. So, I'll have to have a go on one of those Fiats myself next year.
Wait your turn. Well, that's it for Inside Line this week. You can get all the latest news and reviews here at drive.com.au. We'll see you next week.